Sign it before dessert, or I promise you my son will have his marriage annulled by Monday morning." My mother-in-law's voice was quiet. That was the thing about Helena Caldwell, she never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She had spent 40 years perfecting the kind of calm that made you feel the floor shifting beneath you. The kind of calm that reminded you exactly how replaceable you were. I looked at the document sitting next to the cranberry sauce. A postnuptial agreement. 14 pages drafted by the most expensive family law attorney in Connecticut, designed to strip me of every marital asset if my husband and I ever divorced. It had been printed on heavy cream stock, the kind of paper that costs more per sheet than most people's lunch. Someone had placed a pen beside it like silverware, like it was part of the place setting. My husband Marcus sat directly across from me. He was studying his wine glass with the focused attention of a man who had decided the safest thing he could do tonight was become invisible. He wouldn't look at me. He hadn't looked at me since we pulled through the iron gates of his parents' estate 2 hours ago. My father-in-law, Roland, sat at the head of the table, cutting his turkey with the slow, precise movements of someone who had already won. My sister-in-law, Portia, was doing that thing she always did, performing a kind of theatrical indifference, examining her manicure while her husband Wade quietly refilled his glass and watched me, the way you watch a car accident before it happens. This was Thanksgiving at the Caldwells. This was what I had married into 3 years ago, when I was 28 years old and naive enough to believe that love was an effective armor. Before I tell you what I put on that table instead of my signature, and why 20 minutes later 2 black SUVs were blocking the driveway, tell me where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments, because this is a story about what happens when the people who underestimated you the most end up sitting across from the thing they never saw coming. Have you ever had to sit at a table full of people who smiled at you while planning your destruction? If you have, stay with me, because tonight we're not just eating turkey. Let me step back for a second, because to understand what happened at that table, you need to understand what led up to it. My name is Serena, and for 3 years, I was the woman the Caldwells had already decided they knew everything about before they finished their first sentence with me. 3 moments, that's all you need. The first one happened 2 weeks after Marcus and I got engaged. His mother Helena hosted what she called a welcome dinner. Candles, good china, the kind of evening designed to look warm from the outside. After the meal, while Marcus was in another room with his father, Helena guided me into the library and sat across from me in a wingback chair. She folded her hands on her knee and said, in that same quiet voice, "I want to be honest with you, because I think honesty is a form of respect. This family will always protect itself. Whatever your intentions are, we are watching." She smiled when she finished. I walked out of that library and sat in my car for 10 minutes. Hands on the wheel, engine off, just breathing. She thought that was a warning. It was actually a starting gun. The second moment came 6 months into the marriage. I had a business dinner, scheduled professional contacts I had been cultivating for months. 2 days before, the reservation was cancelled. Not by me. Helena had called the restaurant directly and said the dinner wasn't appropriate. She never told Marcus. She never told me. I only found out when one of my contacts reached out to ask if everything was all right. That night I brought it to Marcus. He looked up from his phone just long enough to say, "That's just how she is." Then he looked back down at the screen. 1 sentence, then his phone. I memorized that look. The precise angle of his jaw. The way he didn't put the phone down, didn't set it aside, didn't even pause. That look told me exactly what I was going to have to build and exactly where I was going to have to build it. The third moment was 14 months ago. Family dinner, guests at the table. Helena looked across at me with the smile she performs for company and said, "You came into this family with nothing. We just want clarity on what leaves with you, if things don't work out." She said it like concern, like she was doing me a favor. I never forgot it, because I already knew that someday I was going to give it back. Here's what I didn't know until much later. 4 months before Thanksgiving, Helena had hired someone to look into me. They came back with $48,000 in filed revenue and a company name that led nowhere. She read that as confirmation of everything she had already decided. She had booked the attorney before October. She thought she had found a gold digger, carefully hiding her tracks. She had absolutely no idea what she had actually found. The document was still on the table. The pen was still waiting. Helena went first. She leaned forward slightly, barely, and said my name the way she always said it. Like a minor inconvenience, like a scheduling conflict she hadn't gotten around to resolving. Serena. A small pause. You're a smart woman. I've always said that. Smart enough, I think, to understand what this family represents. What we're asking isn't unreasonable. It's simply a formality. A formality. 14 pages of legal language designed to leave me with nothing. A formality. My father-in-law Roland said nothing. He kept cutting his turkey. Slow, steady strokes. The movement of a man who had already rendered his verdict and saw no reason to repeat it out loud. He had decided before this dinner, maybe before the wedding. The knife just kept moving. My sister-in-law, Portia, looked up from her manicure. She gave me the smile, the one she had been perfecting since the first day Marcus introduced us. Patient, amused. The way you look at a child who has wandered into a conversation meant for adults. No one is attacking you, she said. We just think that given your background, certain protections make sense. Your background. 2 words that had been following me around that house for 3 years. Your background, meaning the small apartment in Ohio. Your background, meaning my mother's hands smelling like the grocery store where she worked double shifts. Your background, meaning a father who left before I was old enough to have a single memory of his face. My brother-in-law Wade cleared his throat. He had gone to Yale Law. He mentioned it the way other people mention their eye color, just context, just basic fact. He set down his glass and looked directly at me. We've done our due diligence. Your company's last filed revenue, $48,000. He let it settle. We're not here to humiliate you. We're here to protect the family. Then Helena came back around. The annulment, fraudulent misrepresentation. Monday morning. She delivered it the same way she delivered everything, without volume, without visible heat, like the outcome was already written, and she was simply reading it aloud for the record. Part of me wanted to tell her right then that I had spent an afternoon with my own attorney 3 months earlier, that failing to disclose the scale of your business success is not a recognized annulment ground in any state in the country, that her most powerful threat was also her most hollow one. I kept every word of that to myself. I let her finish. I let all of them finish. Then I looked at the pen sitting beside the cranberry sauce, at 14 pages of heavy cream paper, waiting for something they were never going to get. I'm not signing it. The table went completely still. You said I came into this family with nothing. My voice was steady. I heard you the first time. I reached into my bag. Before I opened anything, I did one small thing. I found Helena's register. That particular tone she uses when a room needs to understand who is in charge. I had been studying it for 3 years. Not to become her. To be ready for exactly this moment. Pull out your phones, I said. Search Valar Systems. VELAR. I'll wait. Nobody moved. Then Marcus picked up his phone. My sister-in-law Portia reached for hers before something made her catch herself midway. My brother-in-law Wade typed something. My father-in-law Roland lifted his phone with the reluctance of a man who had never once in his life needed to look anything up and deeply resented being asked to start now. Watch their faces, because I was. Marcus read. The color left his face, not slowly, not gradually. Like a switch, flipping off. My sister-in-law Portia went completely still. The kind of stillness that comes when you have recognized a mistake you cannot walk back. Wade's jaw tightened. He has a Yale law education. He knows the shape of a situation the moment it shifts. My father-in-law Roland frowned at the screen, then at his son, then at me. Helena didn't reach for her phone at all. She watched Marcus's face instead, and his face was telling her everything she needed to know, none of it what she had prepared for. Valar Systems. Last public valuation, reported 14 months ago in the Wall Street Journal. $2.1 billion. The Caldwell family's total net worth this estate, my father-in-law Roland's full commercial portfolio, every property and holding they had ever accumulated, approximately $400 million. The room had no language for a moment. Before anyone found any, I opened the first folder. Not the one about money, the other one. I slid a single printed email chain across the table and set it in front of Marcus. This is from your mother. To you. 14 months ago. She accidentally copied me on the reply all. Marcus picked it up. Helena had written it to Marcus on a thread about a family gathering, a gathering she had told him I was unable to attend, a gathering she had never once mentioned to me. The message was brief. I had every word memorized. Marcus, your wife embarrasses this family. She is not one of us. I have handled the guest list accordingly. Marcus stared at the page. Then he looked up at his mother. Helena held his gaze. No expression. No flinch. Just that steady, controlled silence she had been directing at me for 3 years. That silence was its own answer. And Marcus heard it. He looked back at the paper. He didn't look at Helena again. He didn't look at me. He stared at the table, and something moved slowly across his face. The expression of a man assembling a picture he had not known he was living inside. What he started. Keep reading, I said. There are 3 more. I opened the second folder. This one I placed in front of my father-in-law Roland. 18 months ago, your family refinanced 3 commercial properties through a private credit fund called Meridian Capital Partners. $12 million. Last October, I acquired a controlling interest in Meridian as part of a distressed asset portfolio. Favorable terms. Routine acquisition. I had no idea your family were clients when I bought it. Roland's knife went still. My CFO flagged an unusual name in the portfolio review 6 months after the deal closed. I chose not to say anything at the time. I want to be upfront about that. But the balloon payment that came due last month, that was your doing, not mine. The loan is in technical default. I am not calling the note. I want to be completely clear about that. What I need is for everyone at this table to understand what the actual math looks like. My father-in-law, Roland, pushed back his chair and started to rise. I said his name. Once. Calmly. With the same register Helena uses when a room needs to settle. He sat back down. Then I turned to face my brother-in-law, Wade. Slowly. The way you turn when you already know what you will find. The investment account you have been managing through Trident Advisory received material non-public information about a pharmaceutical company's FDA filing timeline. The source worked at a firm that is now a subsidiary of a company I own. Their internal communications fall under our compliance review. I paused. I submitted the relevant files to the SEC whistleblower program 6 days ago. My legal team is outside with civil process documents. I looked at him directly. Wade, you're being served tonight. My sister-in-law Portia did exactly what she had been taught to do in every difficult room she had ever entered. She performed composure. Her voice came out smooth and certain. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. The man at the door held out the document and waited. He didn't adjust his expression. He didn't respond to her tone. He just waited. Portia looked at Wade. Wade said nothing. She turned to Helena for the cues she had always relied on. Helena wasn't looking at her. Helena was already looking at me, past her own daughter, already working on the next calculation. Portia sat back down, not dramatically, not in tears, just the quiet, exact way a person sits when the ground has shifted and sitting is the only option left. She picked up her fork. She didn't eat. She had spent 10 years joining this family. In 30 seconds, she had discovered she had been joining something else entirely. I looked at Marcus. Did you know about the document they put in front of me tonight? His eyes dropped to the table. Did you know? They said it was a formality, barely above a whisper, to protect the family. Yes, I said. I heard. I closed the folder. I looked at my mother-in-law, Helena. You said I came into this family with nothing. You said it like a fact, like my category was already filed and there was nothing left to look into. Every single thing I brought, I built. You never once asked what it was. That was your choice, not mine. A beat. Clean and cold. I didn't lie to you. You never asked. There is a difference. My father-in-law Roland set down his knife. He folded his napkin with the careful precision of a man who never does anything without a reason. He stood. He walked out of the dining room without a word and didn't come back. It was the only thing he did all night. It was enough. I stood. I buttoned my coat. I'll be at the Whitmore Hotel. If you want to talk, not Caldwell talk, actual conversation, you know where I'll be. I looked at Marcus one final time. I'm still your wife. I would like to know if that means something to us, independent of all of this. But that's your decision to make. I walked to the door. Behind me, my sister-in-law Portia said Wade's name. Once. Sharp. Like a question that already knew its answer. The November air hit clean and sharp the moment I stepped outside. The kind of cold that wakes you up instead of punishing you. I pulled out of the circular driveway and watched the Caldwell estate fill my rearview mirror. Every window lit. The house enormous and certain of itself, the way old money always is, like it had never once considered the possibility of being wrong. My phone buzzed on the seat, a text from my CFO. All documentation confirmed and secured. The Wall Street Journal had reached out about the Trident story. What was the timeline for a comment? I typed back, Monday. Send flowers to the team. They have earned it. I thought about calling my mother. Tomorrow, somewhere quiet, away from all of it, she would find a way to make the whole night feel smaller in the best possible way. She always did. 40 minutes later, Marcus knocked on my hotel room door. He looked like a man who had spent the drive over reading emails he couldn't unread. His face was open in a way it hadn't been in years, unguarded, unpolished. Like the version of him I had met at a conference in San Francisco before 3 years of Caldwell gravity had done its slow, patient work on him. He said things that sounded real. For a moment, I let myself believe they were. Then his phone buzzed. He answered it. Something in his face shifted the openness, draining out, replaced by the careful, measured expression I had watched him wear for 3 years. Helena was in the lobby downstairs. Her terms were straightforward. Come home tonight, or she would spend the weekend calling every journalist she knew, framing me as a woman who had engineered the marriage specifically to gain leverage over the family's business holdings. Marcus stood in the doorway, his mother on the phone, his wife in the room. I picked up my own phone. One call. Release the statement. All of it. I looked at Marcus. I filed a preemptive disclosure with our communications team 8 months ago. The moment I realized she might try exactly this. She has nothing left to give them. Helena's last card. Gone. Marcus stared at the phone in his hand. Then he ended the call. Not a gradual decision, not a calculated one weighing costs and consequences, just done. It was the first choice he had made in 3 years without checking the price tag first. I studied his face for a long moment. That's the first real thing you've done in 3 years, I said. I'll remember it. I didn't tell him to come in. I didn't say I forgave him. The door stayed exactly where it was open. Just enough to be a question neither of us had the answer to yet. Some things need more than one night to figure out. The weeks after Thanksgiving moved differently, quieter, but not empty. 3 weeks after that dinner, Wade accepted a cooperation agreement with the SEC. The investigation into his Trident advisory account uncovered a pattern of trades that had generated profits of roughly $260,000 on material non-public information. His attorney tried to negotiate. There was nothing to work with. Wade surrendered his securities licenses. The Yale law degree he used to mention like a casual fact sat in a drawer somewhere, next to a career that no longer existed in the form he had spent years constructing. The people in their social circle, the couples from those holiday tables, the friends who had offered me Portia's brand of gracious warmth found out the way such circles always do, quietly, through channels, over someone's lunch. They recalibrated without making an announcement. Nobody announces when they have changed sides. They just stop calling. 2 months later, a letter arrived at my home address. Helena's handwriting on the envelope. I recognized it immediately. The same controlled cursive from the email chain that had ended her son's understanding of how his marriage had actually worked. The letter was 2 pages. I read the first paragraph. Something about family. Something about how the holidays had always held special meaning. Something about hoping I understood that everything she had ever done had been for the people she loved. I folded it back, along its original creases, and dropped it in the recycling bin on my way to make coffee. No anger, no satisfaction, just done. That is what moving on actually looks like, by the way. Not a dramatic confrontation, not a speech. A letter in the recycling bin, coffee getting made, a text from your CFO that says, "We good?" And you type back, "We're good." And you mean it completely. 3 weeks after that, I sent an envelope of my own to the Ethics Committee of the Connecticut Children's Hospital Foundation, where my mother-in-law, Helena, had chaired the board for 11 years. The envelope contained the email chain, her words, her handwriting, her choices laid out in sequence. I signed my name to the cover letter and let the process do what processes do. The review is still ongoing as of today. I know the envelope arrived. And I know my mother-in-law, Helena, is sitting somewhere in that house, probably in that library, probably in that wingback chair, waiting to find out whether the one credential she valued above everything else still belongs to her. I think about that sometimes. It is enough. Now let me tell you what I actually learned. Because the folders, the documents, the 2 black SUVs in the driveway, those aren't the real story. They are just what happened at the end. The real story started long before Thanksgiving. The first thing is what I call the category trap. My mother-in-law, Helena, never hated me. That would have been simpler to understand. What she did was something more calculated and more damaging. She categorized me. She looked at where I came from, decided what that meant, and filed me under a heading she never once revisited. This isn't unusual. Most cruelty in family dynamics doesn't come from hatred. It comes from incuriosity, from people who decide what you are before they have finished their first sentence with you, and then spend years treating you like the file they created instead of the person actually standing in front of them. Here is what that does over time. You start performing down, being smaller, quieter, less visible, not because you are those things, but because you have learned that existing at full scale triggers their defenses. And the person that performance costs most isn't the one watching you do it. It is you, every single time. Rule number 1. When someone puts you in a box, the answer is never to redecorate the box. Build something so undeniable that the box becomes irrelevant. The second thing, and this one is harder to say, is about Marcus. My mother-in-law, Helena, was always going to be who she was. I went in with clear eyes on that. But Marcus, I expected something different from him. Because I loved him. Because I had told myself that love was armor. He never raised his voice at me. He never openly took sides against me. He did something quieter and more corrosive. He chose comfort over clarity. Every single time. He convinced himself that staying silent meant he wasn't participating. That looking down at his phone while his wife was being dismantled piece by piece wasn't a choice he was actively making. It is always a choice. Silence in the face of harm is a vote. It gets cast every time you say nothing, and it accumulates in the person watching, who gradually understands that she is alone in that house, regardless of who is standing next to her. I am not calling Marcus a villain. I am saying he was something harder to navigate a man who loved me and still failed me, because he valued the idea of peace above the reality of truth. Whether he can find his way back to the person I married is not something I have the power to decide for him. Rule number 2. Be careful of the people who say they love you but consistently look away when it counts. Love without action isn't love. It's a feeling they keep for themselves while you absorb the cost. The third thing is about patience. People sometimes ask what I would have done if Helena hadn't pushed it that Thanksgiving, if she had never placed that document on the table. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe I would have kept waiting, kept absorbing it, kept being patient in the way that starts to look like tolerance and eventually becomes complicity with your own diminishment. That document was the best thing she ever did for me. It turned 3 years of slow erosion into one concrete, undeniable thing I could finally answer. She handed me a line. I drew it. Rule number 3. Sometimes the move they make to finish you is the move that frees you. The thing designed to take everything is the thing that finally makes clear exactly who you are and exactly what you have been building while they were busy deciding your category. I don't feel victorious about any of this. I feel the exhaustion that comes from finishing something long and real. And underneath that lighter, the kind of lightness that arrives when you stop carrying something that was never yours to carry in the first place. If you have ever sat at a table where people smiled at you while planning your erasure, If someone has filed you under a category and refused to look again, drop one word in the comments. Just one. The name of the room where you finally stopped being small. Because some of us have been ready for a long time. We were just waiting for the right table.